Hello everyone, it's Jamal Thomas. Welcome to the Progressive Soapbox. So I did a video yesterday reviewing an interview between Laura Steiner and Jimmy Dore. Now, I've said on multiple occasions that Laura Steiner is a pit bull. The woman is awesome, particularly when she's doing interviews. And she tends to ask strong questions without necessarily being dickish in the way that she asks the questions. They just tends to be aggressively asked. One of the questions, and I didn't go over the entirety of the interview, I focused my conversation or my analysis on the conversation specific to the $20 million that TYT took as an investment by a Democratic contributor. And Dore was giving commentary on it. Dore was discussing it. She asked him, and Dore gave an answer for it. Starting that off, though, she asked something else. She slipped something else in. And she asked him, she said, "I heard you were no longer allowed on TYT. Is that true?" Dore cleared his throat. He said, "No, that's not true. That's a rumor that started online." Here's a question. Where did that rumor start? Where on earth did that rumor start? Is it possible that that rumor started with Jimmy Dore himself? Yes, it's possible that rumor started with Jimmy Dore himself. Now, to be fair, somebody else took what Dore said and kind of ran with it and jumped the shark. But the kernel of the rumor started with Dore himself. I'm going to play the clip. One of my subscribers sent me a video clip of something that was said at the State of the Union by Dore. And it's clearly the origin of that rumor that he was no longer allowed on the show itself. Two things. I have to be honest. I feel a bit of trepidation showing this clip. Now, I have two biases at work, and I think the trepidation becomes because I don't necessarily know what's right based on the biases. It's like your own, your own filter of the world in this way. The first bias is I like Dore. In fact, I like Dore a lot. And because I like Dore a lot, I don't necessarily want to do anything that complicates his life. And for all intents and purposes, he's a human being who works at a media company, and he seems to have friction with the media company in multiple instances. In this case, there seems to have been friction with that particular media company. So it's like, I don't want to do anything to fuck his situation. I resolved this one by assuming that they've already seen this clip. Certainly they have to know this clip exists. I've seen Cenk call in on some other shows, so it's very possible that he's already seen this and somebody has already said something about this. That's the first point. The second point to this is anybody who's doing YouTube has a bias for views. Just is what it is. If you're building a channel, you have a bias in this way. I don't want that particular bias to override other aspects. But I resolved this in a certain way. I think it's news to know, where did this start? Where did this rumor start? It's one thing to say, oh, it's just some internet rumor. But I think it's newsworthy to know, what was the kernel? What was the basis of it? Why did people get that impression that Dore was no longer allowed on the network? That impression, at the very least the beginning of it, came from Dore himself. So I don't have a clear idea of what's right here, and I don't even have a clear idea on which bias is necessarily carrying more weight, or if both are just kind of intruding. But either way, I do think it's newsworthy, and I think it's an interesting clip. So first, let's hear Steiner have asked the conversation. Look, part of the reason I'm asking this is because I did a show called, I asked the question, was there a shakeup at TYT? The reason I asked the question is because there was a long thread of somebody who used to work at TYT dealing and talking to a bunch of people who were pretty despondent on the direction that TYT has taken. Now, that's the first time I had heard that rumor that Dore was no longer allowed on the network. I asked the question, is it true? And I went through the list and highlighted the things that the people were saying, because they didn't seem to be spiteful. They seemed to be more in this situation of, oh, it's fucked up that they've changed in this way, and it is hard to support them in the way that they've changed. That's what it came across as. That being said, that's kind of besides the point. This is Steiner asking the questions, and afterwards, I'll show the video. I have 2 points that I want to make immediately after showing the video, because I want to be very clear about what we're watching. So let's take a look at her ask the question first, and let's go from there.
she was talking about how Cenk is now on the Russia bandwagon, even at the same time that he's talking about we need to be skeptical. What's your opinion about this? And also, I heard that you were taken off of the main show of the Young Turks.
No, I wasn't taken off. That was that got started as an internet rumor. That's not true. I wasn't.
All right. I heard you were taking off the main show. No, that's not true. That started as an internet rumor. Now, just to be very clear, what you're about to see in no way impeaches what he just said. That's something I want to nail down. They're not inconsistent with one another. Somebody took what he just said and kind of jumped the shark with it. But that being said, it did start and originate with Dore himself. Let's take a look at what my subscriber said. My subscriber essentially said, he said, she's really good at interviewing, but she gives him too much leeway. And it sounds like he's saying something different than what he said at the State of the Union. I could be wrong. You tell me. And this was the video that she sent. I said, wow. And to myself, I said, holy fuck. In which case, my thought to myself was, yeah, this seems to be where it all started. So let's take a look at Dore talking about what's taking place during the State of the Union. Let's talk about it after, because there's a few points that need to be made here.
Yes. Okay, good. So that's good. So here we are. We're going to do our first live stream. I'm going to guess that that most of the people who would tune into our normal live stream are going to tune into the Young Turks tonight because they know they're going to live stream, but they don't know we are. I just decided to do it today. So I found out the Young Turks didn't want me on their show tonight, and I was like, well, fuck it, I'll do my own show. That's why I built the studio in the first place, because they couldn't fill up their panels with enough neoliberals, Hillary voters. Well, we don't want to give the audience what they want, Jimmy. We know that they like progressives, but we're going to fill our panels with fucking Hillary voters. Anyway, so that's why we're here, which is good, by the way, because it opens a lane for me. So now my show is taken off like crazy. It's time, and it's the greatest. It's the greatest. I never sold out theaters before, but now I do. And why? It's because I didn't sell out, and now we do sell out theaters. So that's fun.
Can we mention what's coming up?
What's coming? Oh, what we got?
The look on Steph's face, she's like, God damn it, Jimmy. The rumor started there. Now, just a point to be made, they somewhat jumped the shark on this, meaning somebody heard this, and their response to hearing this was, oh my God, they kept Jimmy off the show. Here's the thing. We don't know what was said in the conversation with Dore. Meaning, for all we know, he just left with the impression of, they don't want me on the show for the State of the Union. That was clearly his impression. That's the impression he walked away with, and that's what he's talking about right now. There seems to be a little bit of hurt and pissed off with them not wanting him on the show. That's the first point. The second point is, what he's saying is not inconsistent with what he said prior, meaning it's very possible that they didn't want him on the show for the State of the Union. His impression might have been right. That is different than we don't want you on the show at all. Those are very different. That's what I'm saying. So getting the impression of they don't want me on the show tonight is not the same thing as they never want me on the show again. This is kind of what I mean when I say the kernel of it might have started with Dore, but somebody else kind of jumped the shark and just ran with it. And it went from they don't want me on the show tonight and him being somewhat upset by that to they've kicked him off the show. Do you remember that game? You whisper in somebody's ear, and then by the time you get to the 10th person, it's something completely different. It's like somebody says, I want a blue car. And then he gets to the end, and there's a space alien that abducted me and put something in my ass. It's like, what? How did... These two, though, are pretty close to one another. Meaning, somebody heard that, not necessarily listened to it all that well, may have come away from that thinking to themselves that they don't necessarily want him on the show. That's not necessarily what I heard. What I heard was they didn't want him on the show for the State of the Union, and he seemed upset by it. That being said, I get the feeling that the reason why they were trying to pull him away is because I think he was saying something that they realized was maybe he's saying too much. Maybe he's saying far too much. So I'll leave it at that. This one is not meant to be long. Look, my feeling on this was when I did the video of a shakeup at TYT, and I was asking the question, is this true? Has there been a shakeup? Is he kicked off the show in this way? When you said no, and then Jake comes out and says, no, you guys are crazy, you know, Dore is going to be on the show coming next week. Is it possible that once people started pushing back on that particular notion, that then they said, okay, we need to bring it back on the show to make this work because we have a lefty audience and Dore is respected in this particular community? Yes, it's possible. Do I know that? No. What I do know is in that particular statement, he did not necessarily say they kicked him off the show in perpetuity. So I'm in this camp of believing that Dore doesn't have to leave TYT. I don't think he should leave TYT. I don't even see the reason why this is even an issue. Plenty of television shows have networks where you have different perspectives of the different television networks, the different shows. The catch with TYT is the main show is such a fulcrum in this way, and it calls itself, like to scream about itself being progressive media, that it becomes somewhat of a lightning rod for a lot of the stuff. But that being said, this is where all that started. If you wanted to know where the rumor started of Dore being kicked off the main show, the kernel of it started here. From that point on, somebody took it and kind of ran with it. So I'll leave it at that. All right, guys, if you enjoy the content, feel free to share, like, subscribe, and of course, you can always support through Patreon. Thanks, everyone. And by the way, I did feel weird showing this one. I felt like I felt like this was interesting. But look, part of me feels there's clearly a tension between the main show and Dore's show. No, I have no expectation of them actually talking about this openly. I have no expectation about them trying to air this out or anything else. This is stuff that goes on. It's like what goes on between family stays with family. But it is a hard pill to swallow that when he's talking about the Russia thing, when he's getting angry about the Russia thing, that he doesn't know that his main show is harping on the thing that he's angry and pissed off about. There are other lefty networks that's pushing this Russia narrative and pushing the raising of the intelligence services and the mass surveillance and all this other stuff. But I would imagine that it has to be friction there. That's all. There has to be friction there. And the same way there was friction during the election cycle during 2016 where one side was going for Hillary, the other side wasn't. Yeah, I would imagine there's a certain amount of friction here too. This pushing this Russian nonsense, I don't buy into it. And if anybody has watched Dore for the past few months, he clearly does not buy into it. And so I would imagine there's a bit of friction there. In that, I find it interesting. That's all. I find it interesting. So I'll leave it at that. This video wasn't meant to be long. Like I said, I had trepidation on actually showing the video, but I do think it's newsworthy to know where all of this originated from, how all of it started. This is how it started. All right, guys.